What was supposed to be a quiet renovation inside royal walls has now spiraled into a full-blown palace crisis. Sources claim King Charles personally intervened, freezing Queen Camilla's private renovation project after an architect revealed something so unexpected, so politically sensitive, that it forced the monarch to halt everything. This wasn't about paint colors or antique furniture. It was about power, legacy, and something Camilla allegedly never intended to be discovered. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. At first, it seemed harmless. A private refurbishment, a modest reshaping of personal quarters. The paperwork was signed with little ceremony, approved quietly under routine expenditure. No headlines, no fanfare, just another internal adjustment inside a palace that has seen centuries of change. But beneath that calm exterior, something was already shifting. Because while the official proposal described aesthetic updates and structural reinforcement, insiders now claim the scope of the project began to expand silently, steadily, and without the usual transparency expected at this level of the monarchy. It started with numbers, budgets that crept upward, allocations that didn't align with the original proposal. Advisors who initially waved it through began asking careful questions. Why were additional consultants brought in? Why were certain wings being remeasured? Why did the redesign require alterations that seemed permanent? What had been framed as a personal refresh was quietly transforming into something far more ambitious. And then came the meeting. The architect trusted, respected, deeply embedded in the palace's operational circle requested a private audience with King Charles. That detail alone sent ripples through the inner court. Architects do not bypass procedure. They do not escalate unless absolutely necessary. Yet this one did. And according to sources close to the situation, what he presented behind closed doors changed everything. Blueprints were laid out. Not decorative sketches, but structural plans. Adjustments that reconfigured space in ways that subtly redefined access and authority. Walls that shifted symbolic boundaries. Rooms that suggested independent function rather than shared tradition. The tone of the conversation reportedly turned grave. King Charles, who had originally approved the renovation in good faith, was now confronted with a broader vision, one that carried implications far beyond comfort or modernization. Within hours, the order was given. Freeze it. No press release. No formal explanation. Contractors were instructed to stand down. Financial streams were paused. Internal communication tightened. Staff who had been coordinating schedules were told, abruptly, that all further work was suspended until further notice. The silence was deafening. For those inside the palace, the message was unmistakable. This had crossed a line. Shock spread quickly. Camilla's team reportedly pushed back, confused by the sudden reversal. Some believed it was a misunderstanding. Others sensed something deeper, an undercurrent of mistrust. Because if this were merely about cost overruns, adjustments could have been made. If it were about timing, delays would have sufficed. But a total freeze? That signaled something existential. And as whispers intensified through private corridors and guarded conversations, one unsettling truth began to crystallize. This was no longer about interior design. It was about influence. It was about visibility. It was about who shapes the future of the crown from within its own walls. But what exactly did the architect reveal that caused King Charles to reverse course so dramatically? And why did it strike at the heart of royal authority? The turning point wasn't a press leak. It wasn't a family argument. It was a closed-door conversation between King Charles and the architect himself. According to insiders, the architect requested a private audience not to defend the project, but to clarify its true scope. What he allegedly disclosed reframed the entire renovation as something far more symbolic and potentially destabilizing to the delicate balance of royal power. By the time that meeting was arranged, tension was already simmering beneath the surface. The architect, once enthusiastic about the commission, had reportedly grown uneasy. At first, he had followed instructions as outlined: adjust this corridor, expand that reception area, reinforce structural supports. But as revisions multiplied and the purpose behind certain changes became clearer, hesitation crept in. The project no longer felt like a restoration. It felt like a repositioning. Sources suggest he entered that private audience carrying not just documents, but concern. He allegedly explained that the renovation had evolved beyond decorative updates. Entire sections of the historic layout were being reconsidered. Passageways were being rerouted. Access points modified. Rooms once integrated into shared royal operations were being redesigned with separation in mind. These were not minor adjustments, they altered the rhythm of how the palace functioned. More striking were the plans said to include discrete administrative quarters, self-contained offices, private meeting spaces, and independent staffing areas. On paper, they could be justified as efficiency upgrades. But context matters. Within a monarchy built on symbolism, space speaks louder than statements. And these structural changes, subtle yet deliberate, appeared to carve out something resembling autonomy rather than unity. King Charles, insiders claim, was visibly unsettled. He had approved a renovation, not a recalibration of internal authority. The distinction was critical. Because once you alter the physical structure of power, you inevitably influence how that power is exercised. What startled him most, according to those familiar with the exchange, was not the ambition but the quietness with which it had unfolded. The modifications had been phased in gradually, masked within technical language, shielded by routine approvals. The architect reportedly made one thing clear: he needed clarity on intent. Was this meant to establish a parallel operational sphere? Was it simply modernization? Or was it something more strategic, something that would reshape perception inside and outside palace walls? Those questions hung heavily in the room. For a monarch deeply aware of history's scrutiny, the idea of perceived divided leadership was not just inconvenient, it was dangerous. The implications rippled outward instantly. If the public ever sensed fragmentation at the core of the crown, confidence could falter. Advisors would speculate. The press would feast. Even loyal supporters might begin to question the unity of the institution. And so, within hours of that meeting, the decision was made. Not a revision, not a delay, a full stop. The freeze order moved swiftly through internal channels, quiet but absolute. Yet as decisive as that action was, it did not erase the deeper unease that had been exposed. Because once the king had seen those blueprints, once he understood the trajectory of what was being built, he could no longer view the project as innocent evolution. It had revealed something larger about intention, ambition, and the shifting currents beneath the surface of royal life. But the deeper Charles examined those blueprints, the clearer it became that this wasn't about architecture, it was about influence. What if the renovation wasn't simply a redesign, but a redefinition? Insiders suggest that Camilla's project would have created a semi-independent operational wing, complete with private staff corridors and separate administrative access. To some, it looked like modernization. To others, it resembled something else entirely. A quiet assertion of control within walls that traditionally answer to one sovereign. As the details of the blueprints circulated quietly among senior advisors, the implications became harder to dismiss. This was not a matter of taste or comfort. It was structural. Independent office spaces had reportedly been mapped out with careful precision, rooms positioned to operate efficiently without relying on the king's central administrative channels. On paper, they were practical additions. In reality, they represented something far more delicate. A shift in how authority might be exercised behind closed doors. There were also plans for a private reception area separate from King Charles's established quarters. Supporters argued it was simply a matter of scheduling flexibility, allowing the Queen to host her own engagements without logistical overlap. But symbolism matters in a monarchy built on unity. Separate reception spaces suggested separate spheres. And separate spheres, even subtly defined, can signal divided centers of gravity. Then came the security considerations. Distinct arrangements were reportedly under review, including adjusted access routes and tailored protective protocols, again justifiable on operational grounds. Yet when viewed together with the administrative changes, the picture sharpened. This was not merely about comfort or convenience. It was about carving out a space that functioned independently physically, procedurally, and perhaps even politically. Whispers of financial autonomy began to ripple through palace corridors. Though no formal declaration had been made, Internal discussions allegedly touched on budget discretion tied specifically to the redesigned wing. If true, that would mean more than a construction project. It would signal a financial footprint distinct from the king's established channels. For some advisors, that crossed an invisible but critical line. Staff realignments were rumored as well. Certain aides expected to transition into roles aligned exclusively with Camilla's operational circle, potentially reporting through a streamlined chain of command. To supporters, it was efficiency. To skeptics, it was consolidation. The difference depended entirely on perspective, and perspective inside a palace can determine legacy. The symbolic weight of architectural separation cannot be overstated. Throughout royal history, space has reflected hierarchy. Shared corridors implied shared authority. Unified entrances suggested a single center of command. Alter that design, and you risk altering perception. And perception, in the world of monarchy, can be more powerful than policy. Royal advisors, seasoned in the art of optics, reportedly grew alarmed. Not because the plans were unlawful, not because they were reckless, but because they were bold. Too bold. In an institution that survives on balance, even subtle shifts can spark instability. The fear was not immediate chaos. It was gradual recalibration and emerging narrative that the Queen's influence was evolving from supportive to strategic. As the freeze order settled like a quiet thunderclap over the project, the deeper meaning of those blueprints lingered. They were never just about walls or corridors. They hinted at a future where influence might be exercised from more than one center. And in a monarchy defined by singular sovereignty, that possibility alone was enough to ignite tension that could not easily be undone. And as palace insiders digested the implications, one question began to dominate the corridors of power. Who was this renovation really for? To understand the magnitude of this freeze, one must understand Camilla's long journey from controversy to crown. Sources close to her suggest this renovation was deeply personal. A legacy project. A symbolic milestone. But critics argue the timing and the secrecy suggested something more strategic. Was this about cementing her place in history, or quietly reshaping the royal hierarchy? For decades, Camilla lived in the shadow of scrutiny. Every gesture analyzed. Every appearance compared. Her path to acceptance was not paved with celebration but resistance. Slowly, carefully, she transformed her public image from divisive figure to steady royal presence. That transformation did not happen by accident. It was earned through patience, endurance, and calculated restraint. And perhaps that is why this renovation carried such emotional gravity. It was not just construction, it was affirmation. Those who defend her say this project represented permanence. After years of feeling like an addition to an already written story, this was a chance to inscribe her own chapter into the physical heart of the monarchy. Architecture endures. Walls remain long after headlines fade. A redesigned wing could symbolize belonging in a way speeches never could. It could quietly declare, "I am not temporary. I am part of this institution's future." But that is precisely where suspicion began to grow. Because permanence within royal walls is not a neutral act. It echoes across generations. The timing, critics argue, felt deliberate. With King Charles firmly on the throne and succession discussions always hovering in the background, even subtle moves carry weight. Was this renovation about comfort, or about influence that would extend beyond the current reign? The question lingered, uncomfortable and persistent. Advisors were reportedly split. Some viewed the plans as a natural evolution of her role. After all, as queen, should she not have operational space reflecting her responsibilities? Others warned that optics are everything. Too bold a transformation could be interpreted as ambition rather than service. And ambition, within a monarchy, is a dangerous word. There was also the deeper emotional current, one that rarely makes it into official briefings. Camilla has endured public doubt for years. To finally stand secure beside the king may have inspired a desire to solidify that security in tangible form. Not out of rebellion, not out of rivalry, but out of human instinct, the longing to leave something lasting. Yet in a system built on inherited continuity, even personal longing can ripple into institutional consequence. The tension between modernization and tradition intensified, Supporters framed the renovation as progress. Detractors saw disruption. And somewhere between those interpretations lay the truth: this was never just about bricks and corridors. It was about identity, about validation, about how far a queen can step forward without appearing to step out of line. As the freeze order cast a shadow over those ambitions, the emotional stakes sharpened. Because for Camilla, this may have felt like more than a halted project, it may have felt like a pause on recognition itself. And as emotions swelled behind palace doors, another name began circulating in hushed conversations: William. Though publicly silent, Prince William's shadow loomed large over this controversy. As future king, any structural shift within the palace carries generational consequences. Insiders suggest William was privately briefed after the freeze, and his response may have influenced Charles's firm stance. Because this wasn't just about Camilla, it was about the monarchy's next chapter, and who defines it. When the architect left that pivotal meeting and the freeze order was quietly issued, the ripple did not stop with King Charles. It moved forward toward the heir. William, by all accounts, was informed soon after. Not through rumor, not through press speculation, directly. The details of the blueprints, the concerns about autonomy, the potential optics of a semi-independent wing, all of it was laid before him with careful precision. And while he made no public comment, those close to the inner circle suggest his reaction was measured, thoughtful, and unmistakably strategic. Because William understands something fundamental: palaces are not just homes. They are symbols. The arrangement of rooms, the flow of access, the visible and invisible lines of authority, these details shape perception. And perception shapes legitimacy. Any operational overlap between a reigning monarch and a future one must be delicately managed. Add a strong queen with evolving influence into that equation, and the balance becomes even more fragile. There were reportedly concerns about future complications. If Camilla's redesigned wing operated independently, how would that structure transition during the next reign? Would it create awkward redundancies? Competing centers of staff? Confusion over authority? These questions were not accusations. They were precautions. But in royal life, precautions often carry the weight of quiet warnings. Advisors loyal to continuity urged caution. The crown survives by appearing seamless across generations. Any hint of division, real or perceived, can undermine that illusion of stability. William's position as heir means he is not merely observing these changes, he is inheriting their consequences. Every adjustment made today shapes the landscape he will one day govern. And insiders suggest he is acutely aware of that responsibility. For King Charles, this placed him in an emotionally complex position. Loyalty to his wife stood on one side, legacy on the other. Supporting Camilla's personal ambitions might affirm their partnership. But safeguarding the institution requires restraint. And the monarch, perhaps more than anyone, understands that legacy outlives affection. His reported firmness after briefing William may not have been a rejection of Camilla's vision, but a reaffirmation of singular sovereignty. Subtle generational undercurrents began to surface. Not conflict, not open disagreement, but a quiet recalibration of influence. William's future reign cast a long shadow over present decisions. The freeze order, in that context, became more than a reaction, it became a statement. A signal that structural changes would not outrun constitutional clarity. Yet even as the family sought to contain this delicate recalibration behind palace doors, something unexpected began to stir beyond them. And just as the family attempted to contain the fallout, the media began catching wind of something unusual. It started with a whisper in a royal column. Then came the budget anomaly reports. Suddenly, journalists were asking questions the palace wasn't prepared to answer. Why had renovations stalled? Why were contractors quietly dismissed? The freeze order, meant to stay internal, had leaked. And the absence of explanation only fueled suspicion that something much larger was unfolding behind the gates. At first, it was subtle. A single line buried in a society page, hinting at unexpected delays. Then a financial correspondent noted irregularities in scheduled allocations. The story didn't explode overnight. It simmered. And in that simmering silence, curiosity grew teeth. Contractors who had been discreetly engaged were reportedly told to pause indefinitely. Equipment deliveries halted. meetings canceled without explanation. For a project once moving with confident momentum, the sudden stillness felt unnatural. Reporters began tracing the paper trail. Why had projected costs shifted so dramatically in such a short span? Why were certain approvals now marked as suspended? The palace, usually swift in shaping narratives, offered nothing but measured silence. No confirmation. No denial. Just a carefully crafted refusal to comment on private residential matters. But the more restrained the response, the louder the speculation became. Anonymous staff whispers slipped into the press. Nothing direct. Nothing provable. Just enough to suggest internal disagreement. Phrases like unexpected intervention and senior-level review began appearing in articles. The language was cautious, yet the implication was unmistakable. Something significant had happened behind closed doors, and the public, long attuned to royal undercurrents, sensed it. Social media amplified the mystery. Commentators debated whether this was a financial dispute, a political recalibration, or a personal conflict. Each theory fed the next. The narrative began spinning faster than the palace could contain. And in that whirlwind, perception hardened into assumption. The freeze was no longer viewed as administrative, it was interpreted as confrontation. Through it all, King Charles maintained composed silence. Public appearances continued, speeches delivered, engagements fulfilled. Yet observers noted a subtle restraint in his demeanor, a controlled steadiness that only deepened intrigue. Silence, in moments like this, is rarely accidental. It can be a shield. Or it can be strategy. Camilla, meanwhile, was noticeably absent from events loosely connected to heritage and preservation areas that would have naturally aligned with the renovation's theme. Her absence was not dramatic. It was quiet. But quiet can echo louder than protest. And for those watching closely, the distance felt deliberate. The longer the palace withheld clarity, the more the story expanded. What began as a renovation delay evolved into a symbol of possible fracture. Journalists began asking not just about construction, but about cohesion, about unity, about power. The freeze order, once an internal safeguard, had become public fuel. And while headlines sharpened and speculation surged beyond the gates, the true weight of the decision pressed inward, where loyalty, pride, and partnership collided in ways the public could only imagine. But while the public speculated, the real tension was unfolding privately between husband and wife. Behind the gilded doors, sources suggest an emotionally charged conversation took place, one that tested not only authority but trust. King Charles reportedly expressed deep concern over the direction of the project, while Camilla defended it as misunderstood. What began as a renovation dispute may have evolved into a profound reckoning about influence, autonomy, and the fragile balance of partnership within the crown. By the time they spoke privately, the pressure from outside had already tightened its grip. Headlines questioned unity. Commentators speculated about ambition. Silence from the palace only deepened suspicion. And in that heavy atmosphere, the discussion between husband and wife could not have been purely logistical. It was personal. Intensely so. Charles, insiders claim, did not raise his voice. He did not need to. His concern was sharper than anger. He reportedly questioned why the scope of the renovation had shifted without clearer communication, why structural changes had expanded beyond the original agreement, why he, as sovereign, had learned the full extent from an architect rather than directly from his queen. It was not just about walls, it was about transparency. Camilla, by contrast, is said to have stood firm. She allegedly insisted her intentions had been misread, that what others labeled autonomy was simply efficiency, that what critics described as separation was modernization. After years of enduring public doubt, she may have felt this was yet another moment where her motives were unfairly scrutinized. The emotional undercurrent was undeniable. For her, the project symbolized recognition. For him, it risked complication. There was history beneath every word. Camilla's long journey to acceptance. Charles' lifelong preparation for a role defined by restraint. Both have carried public scrutiny like armor. Yet armor can weigh heavily in private moments. Sources suggest the conversation turned to optics, how the public would interpret independent quarters, separate administration, distinct operational channels. In a monarchy, perception is not secondary. It is survival. Trust became the unspoken theme. Not distrust in loyalty, but in alignment. Were they moving forward together, or at slightly different speeds? Was ambition outrunning coordination? These were not accusations shouted across a room. They were quieter, heavier reflections. And sometimes quiet reflections cut deeper than open conflict. Advisors, aware of the emotional stakes, reportedly maintained careful neutrality. No one wanted to appear to side against the queen. No one dared undermine the king's authority. The atmosphere within the inner circle grew delicate, almost brittle. Every word measured. Every suggestion softened. Because when personal partnership intersects with institutional leadership, the consequences ripple far beyond a single disagreement. There are whispers of a temporary cooling period. Fewer joint briefings. Separate consultations. Not a rift, but a recalibration. Still, tension does not evaporate simply because it is contained. It lingers. It hums beneath routine engagements and formal smiles. And unresolved tension inside a palace can shape decisions long after the original conflict fades from headlines. What makes this moment so charged is not the renovation itself. It is what the frieze revealed. The delicate line between personal aspiration and shared authority. The crown demands unity. Marriage demands understanding. When those forces collide, even the strongest partnership can feel the strain. And as emotions simmered within the palace, a far greater question began to surface: what happens next? The frieze may seem temporary, but its symbolism is permanent. Royal architecture has always represented continuity, stability, authority. And when a king halts a queen's vision, it sends a message far beyond bricks and mortar. Insiders warn this decision could redefine internal dynamics for years to come, reshaping not just walls, but the monarchy's power structure itself. Because once a line is drawn, even quietly, it echoes. By stopping the renovation at its peak, King Charles did more than pause construction. He reaffirmed a principle: there is only one center of sovereign authority. In a world where every gesture is analyzed and every adjustment interpreted, that message carries immense weight. It reinforces hierarchy, it clarifies command, and it subtly redraws boundaries that may have begun to blur. For Camilla, the long-term impact may be more complex. Publicly, her role remains secure. She stands beside the king, visible, composed, unwavering. But privately, this frieze may signal limits. Not rejection, but containment. Her influence is undeniable, yet this moment underscores that influence operates within carefully defined parameters. The contrast is striking: years spent building acceptance, only to confront a reminder that legacy is negotiated, not assumed. Charles, meanwhile, emerges as both husband and monarch. In choosing to halt the project, he chose legacy over convenience. The move reinforces singular sovereignty at a time when even whispers of divided authority could weaken perception. It was decisive, it was controlled, and it may have strengthened his image among traditionalists who value stability above all else. Public perception, of course, must be managed with precision. The palace narrative emphasizes unity, continuity, shared purpose. Advisors have reportedly recalibrated internal protocols to ensure future proposals undergo stricter oversight. No more gradual expansions. No more ambiguous scopes. The institution has tightened its internal guardrails not out of paranoia, but out of preservation. In this recalibration, William's position is quietly fortified. As heir, he benefits from clarity. The frieze reinforces the structural continuity he will one day inherit. It eliminates ambiguity before it can calcify into complication. Without speaking a word publicly, his future authority appears subtly safeguarded. The generational transition remains clean, controlled, and yet, uncertainty lingers. The renovation's future is undefined. Will it be revised, reduced, reimagined under stricter terms? Or will it fade into palace history as an ambitious vision that reached too far? Staff members remain cautious. Contractors wait in silence. Blueprints sit untouched, but not destroyed. Suspended, perhaps, but not erased. The palace unity narrative is being tested in ways that extend beyond this project. Because unity is not proven by harmony alone. It is proven by how conflict is resolved. This freeze has become more than a logistical pause. It is a statement about boundaries, authority, and the invisible architecture of power. And as the monarchy recalibrates in the wake of this decision, a deeper question hovers in the quiet spaces left behind. Yet even with the freeze in place, one final revelation lingers: was this truly the end of the project, or only its transformation? Freezing a project is not the same as ending it, and insiders now suggest revised blueprints may already be under quiet review. Because in the monarchy, power rarely disappears, it adapts. What began as a halted renovation may evolve into something subtler, quieter, but no less significant. And the real question is no longer what was stopped, but what might rise in its place. In the days following the freeze, silence settled like a curtain. But silence inside royal walls rarely means surrender. It often signals recalculation. There are whispers carefully phrased, deliberately vague, that a scaled-down proposal could emerge. Fewer structural changes, less administrative separation, a refined vision presented not as expansion, but as alignment. If true, it would not be retreat. It would be strategy. Camilla has never been politically naive. Her journey from public skepticism to institutional acceptance required patience that borders on resilience. Those who underestimate her ability to adapt misunderstand the path she has already traveled. If the original design felt too bold, too exposed, she may choose subtlety over scale. Influence does not always need new walls. Sometimes it simply needs time. For King Charles, the balancing act continues. He must protect the institution without undermining partnership, reinforce sovereignty without signaling fracture. Each decision now carries layered meaning. Too firm, and it appears dismissive. Too lenient, and it invites speculation. His leadership in this moment is less about construction plans and more about perception management, holding the monarchy steady while navigating personal complexity. The media, however, will not simply move on. Scrutiny lingers. Analysts revisit timelines. Commentators reinterpret past appearances through the lens of this controversy. Every future renovation, every operational adjustment will be measured against this episode. The freeze has sharpened attention. And once attention sharpens, it rarely dulls quickly. Inside the palace, unity remains the official narrative. But unity tested is not the same as unity assumed. Advisors are reportedly tightening oversight, ensuring future initiatives move through clearer channels. Protocols evolve quietly. Internal approvals become more rigorous. Not because the monarchy is unstable, but because it is determined not to appear so. And beneath it all, something more subtle is shifting. The internal map of influence: who advises whom, who initiates what, who approves which proposal has been quietly redrawn. Not dramatically, not publicly, but meaningfully. The monarchy survives by adapting to pressure, and this pressure has exposed sensitive intersections between personal ambition and institutional continuity. The halted renovation may never return in its original form, or it may resurface transformed, stripped of controversy yet carrying the same intention beneath softer lines. In royal history, projects pause, evolve, and re-emerge under different names. What matters is not the blueprint itself, but the balance it represents. And as the palace steadies its outward posture and recalibrates its internal rhythm, one truth remains suspended in the quiet: nothing within the House of Windsor is ever entirely finished. Because in the House of Windsor, every closed door hides another conversation, and every frozen plan may simply be waiting for the right moment to thaw.